Finance since 2003. Our focus is on equity, new debt solutions, challenging corporate foreclosures, and debt restructures. Commercial Mortgage never charges a front fee, and consultations are always free. Areas of expertise include hotels, marinas, office buildings, restaurants, apartments, multifamily, condos, golf courses, home builders, and land development, including new and repurposed developments. Call Commercial Mortgage LLC at 561-310-5295 or visit us online at commercialmortgagellc.com. Attention boaters, are you looking for a safe harbor during hurricane season or a top-notch boatyard to keep your vessel in tip-top shape? Look no further than Indiantown Marina. Indiantown Marina is not just your average boat storage facility. Nestled in South Florida along the Okeechobee Waterway, we're a well-protected hurricane hull that savvy cruisers love to call home. We offer a full array of boatyard services or do it yourself. Reserve your safe hurricane harborage today and let Indiantown Marina be the ultimate caretaker for your vessel. For more information, call 597-2457 or visit indiantownmarina.com. Get ready, country music lovers. Coming to Archie's this weekend is Susie Nash. With the soul of Patsy, Martina's vocal range, Reva's swagger, and Dolly's heart. Yes, you heard it right. Susie Nash is setting her course to be the next country sensation. Catch her live at Archie's in Fort Pierce Friday and Saturday from 5 to 8 and Sunday from 2 to 5. Too far away? Don't fret. Just strum your way to Spotify, Apple Music, or any streaming service. Or grab a CD at SusieNash.com. So tune in and turn it up. It's time for Susie Nash.
It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Well, happy Wednesday to everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. And boy, oh boy, Susie Nash, she is one heck of a country sensation that's up and coming. She's getting ready to go on tour, and I'm going to have her right here in the studio on March 6th, and we're going to hear all about the exciting things that Susie has and her new release. And if you can catch Susie every weekend, Fridays and Saturdays from 5 to 8, Sunday from 2 to 5 at Archie's, and y'all know Archie's Seabreeze in Fort Pierce at 401 South Ocean Drive, where no shoes, no shirt are no problem. Also, you know what? Michael Circus from Martin County Commission District 5 wants to remind all residents that the greatest power you have as a resident is to be involved in your local politics. Vote on August 20th for your next county commissioner. Michael Circus, focused on the future, educated on the past. Paid for by Michael Circus, Campaign for County Commission District 5. Folks, we're going to have a couple good shows today. First one is live with Jeff Buongiorno. The second one will be on Facebook Live and will air on WSTU next Wednesday at 10 a.m. The second show, I want to let everybody know, for Martin County, there's a lot going on right now with the comp plan, and I'm going to have Mary Dawson, former Martin County Commissioner. She's also an author that's just released a new book, and we're going to talk about both of those things. But it's very striking to me, the comments that she made 20 years ago and what we're dealing with now today, and Mary is going to come in and talk about that. But first, I have a really good show on tap. I have Jeff Buongiorno in the studio, and you may have remembered Jeff. He's been here before. He ran for Congress last time in CD 21, our district. And Jeff is coming back again this year, and he has a lot to talk about today, but we're going to focus a lot on election integrity today. Jeff has been really following up on it last couple of years and has a lot of super interesting information. As you know, I'm going to be starting a Rumble podcast that'll be the Casey Ingram Show Unleashed, and this is an example of the topic that we'll be talking about. It's something that not only are we concerned about locally here on the Treasure Coast, but nationwide. And Jeff Buongiorno is a political outsider who has been watching the hijacking of our government by various forces for years. These include lifelong career politicians, Socialist Democrats, and the Communist Chinese government, elite globalist, mainstream media, Hollywood, and big tech. He believes it's time for we, the people, to take our government back and restore it to its rightful owners, the people. Jeff Buongiorno is a conservative constitutionalist and an American businessman. He escaped from the tyranny of New Jersey and fled to the great state of Florida over a decade ago, seeking new opportunities and medical freedom. Jeff spent his career fighting for law enforcement and standing up for the Constitution. Early on, he served as deputy sheriff. Jeff later built several companies, including private IT vocational schools, transportation, supply chain, manufacturing, and tech companies. His computer school helped many veterans through the GI Bill and the unemployed through the Workforce Development and Workforce Investment Act with an 80% job placement rate. Jeff's tech company helped U.S. manufacturers better compete with foreign competition through automation and modernization, leveraging grants through the Trade Adjust Assistance for Firms Act. Jeff served on the Microsoft Research Panel for over 4 years. He knows that low taxes and less regulation will spawn more opportunities for everyone. While the Socialist Democrats are attempting to cancel the history of our great nation, Jeff is running for Congress to protect our constitutional and God-given rights as an ardent defender and supporter of self-governance. He believes the Constitution is as relevant today as it was when it was signed, and he is prepared to fight for we the people. Jeff, welcome back to the studio today, and I'm so excited to hear about your new run for Congress. Congratulations.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Love it.
That bio's a lot longer when you read it than when you write it. It's
it's quite all right. It's important for people to know you and a lot about your background. It says that bio says a lot about who you are and what you stand for.
Thank you. I have a lot of experience in the private sector, and I have the mission, the passion, and the skill set. I'm a problem solver, and I want to work for the people. I want to get to D.C. D.C. needs smaller bills and bigger balls.
There you go.
we need some boldness. We haven't followed the 1974 Congressional Budget Act calls for 12 appropriation bills, single subject. We haven't followed that since the 90s, and these politicians need to be held accountable for this. And we're going with these continuing resolutions where we're not going to increase a budget. We're going to decrease it by 2%. So we're saving money. No, it doesn't work that way in real life. We're $35 trillion in debt. Our interest is going to account for more than our defense. We're spending $4.6 million a minute on interest, and we want to send more money to Ukraine. Yeah. So it's a broken system, and it's not just I don't want to single out the incumbent. I don't want to single out any one person. It kind of reminds me of the Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco's steroid period, where it's just it's a culture, and it just we need a reset, and we need to send regular people, and I don't talk in political speak. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say, and if I'm wrong, I'll admit it, and I'll be accountable for it. And what does that really mean, though, to be accountable for it? Well, that's I guess a subject for another time.
It's important though.
Yeah, but that's who I am. I've worked with a lot of veterans with my IT training facility, and it's speaking of veterans and military. I just think part of the problem, what got us to the point where we are now, is people have blind trust and support in institutions, and it's very easy to fool someone. It's very difficult to convince someone they've been fooled, and that's part of my my drive, my campaign, is to help change the narrative. We have the mainstream media, Hollywood, big tech. They're censoring us. They're influencing our children with this wokeness, confusing them, and we really need to push back. And I was bequeathed a great country when I was born in 1966, and if I borrow a lawnmower from my neighbor, I return it clean and filled with gas. So I just feel like an obligation to try to get this country back to where it was when it was handed over to the custody of my generation.
And Jeff, I appreciate you coming on here today, and I'm glad that you're running because it gives people a choice. And it's so much, and this is something actually on Unleashed I want to cover, is what goes on behind the scenes, because you're kind of touching on a lot of that. Our government system is absolutely broken, and it's really ran by a lot of the insiders, the employees that stay there. It's not just the electeds. And so many of our electeds get there, they have the right intentions, and all of a sudden they find out. I had a congressman that was in here before a few years ago, and he said, when I was elected, 90% of my job was fundraising. I got up there, and my staff just handed me and told me how to vote. That's not representing the people anymore.
That's not. And, part of the problem is we have these huge districts, 760,000 people in a district. there's 22 countries with a smaller population than one congressional district. And, I believe the more laws, the less justice, right? And we've been passing all these laws as the country matures, 250 years, whatever it is now. So we need to repeal and peel back. Do almost an audit and go back and start. Less laws. Let's peel back and restore the freedom to the people. One of the devastating laws, actually it happened twice, in 1862 and 1929. It was called the Permanent Reapportionment Act, and where it was dictated that we can only have one rep per 760,000 people. Shortly thereafter, the stock market crashed in 1929, about 45 days after that law was passed. But that basically, it took us from a path of self-governance to tyranny. Put it this way, there were 12 Major League Baseball teams in 1929, and now there's 32. So our representation, I'm not a fan of big government. I'm a fan of closer representation to the people. So you're going to say, well, we need more congressmen. Well, yeah, they don't need to make $200,000 a year. They don't even need to be in D.C., and let's make it more, in ancient Greece, everyone had to serve, right? So let's make it more like an HOA where after 4 years or 6 years, you're sick of it, and, we don't really, need term limits.
Amen, Jeff. Our elected officials are supposed to be public servants, and it's not that anymore. I mean, so many people are elected to Congress, they're only worth so much, a few $100,000, and they come out multimillionaires. Something's going on here when you go in there. And the term limit thing, even our existing congressman right now, when he first ran, he said, I am 4 term limits, 2 term limits and I'm out. And, he's going in for his 4th term now, I think. So once you get in there, something else happens, and it becomes something that it's bigger than that one person, and they become part of the system.
I'm going to say I'm against term limits, but I'm for fair elections. Yeah. And when Congress has an 18% approval rate and they're reelected almost 90% of the time.
How does that happen?
How does that happen?
Yeah, what are people voting on?
What I want to say to the people, if you like your congressman, send him a Valentine's Day card. If you want change in D.C., send me to D.C.
Vote for you, Jeff.
Yep.
Vote for Jeff. Shane Stabley, he's been a past guest here, and he's tuned in. Good to see you, Shane. Jeff has come a long way from the last congressional race and can be a contender in the current run for Congress. I'm supporting him. He is a legitimate America First candidate.
Appreciate that, Shane. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, Shane's a great patriot. Thank you.
So, and let's talk about what you have been really studying, what you have been researching, what you have found out, especially in regards to election integrity. You learned a lot of things through and since the last election. So let's step back a little bit and focus on that.
Yeah, I don't know where to even start on that, but let's start with one of the first things I noticed, and a lot of people noticed on November 3rd, 2020, when they stopped counting the votes and things just kind of went south. It was just doing data analytics and noticing that some of these states had just a massive increase in voter registration that didn't align with the population growth. So there's a lot there. Well, as time went on, I got deeper into it, and I went to Tallahassee, and after announcing my run and gathering over 175 or so petitions requesting an audit of the 2020 general election, we drove to Tallahassee. We went to the governor's office. We sat down in a conference room. Two other patriots went up there with me, and we didn't hear anything back. We were sure that the governor will take care of this. We're going to look into it, but crickets, and that's 175 citizens that are upset. And if there's 175 that are willing to put their name and their voter ID number down, that means there's a heck of a lot more. And I think since then, it's gotten a lot more traction. I hear statistics that 2/3 of the population of the United States believe that there was election fraud and that the current incumbent in the White House is illegitimate. But I'm an IT expert. I don't want to talk about myself too much. I have over 100 IT certifications, and I implement that in a real world scenario. So I'm good at connecting the dots. And part of the my congressional run was to have an inside look at what really goes on. And I don't know if you all remember, I started in district in Palm Beach County running against primarying a team of people, but the incumbent was Lois Frankel. And I addressed the supervisor of elections, Wendy Link, in Palm Beach County about certain, I'll call them a threat surface. There's a huge threat surface that I identified, and there was just no willingness to even hear it. The problem that I have is these. I don't want to bash these local officials. They work hard, but they just have blind trust and support of the governor or we have an outside consulting firm, and I decided to switch districts and run up here. And I live right on the border of both districts, so I'm not it's an easy commute. And the fact of the matter is that there were I'll skip the technical stuff. We'll save that for Unleashed. So everyone has to tune into Unleashed when it's up. But let's look at my candidacy, because right now people might be looking and say, hey, you only got 15, 18% of the vote. You're a terrible candidate. Why are you coming back? Well, what we uncovered was that in 12 out of 13 precincts where we FOIA'd the cast vote records, the first 50 sequential votes went to the incumbent before any of the other three candidates. There were four in the race at the time, received one vote, and they're in cast vote sequential order. So that means there's some kind of electronic manipulation, from what I understand, and this needs to be investigated, or maybe it was a case of ballot harvesting. So there's a lot of there's more questions than answers so far, and it seems like this was predicted in 2020. I don't know if you want to go to that clip now or not.
Yeah, we can go to the clips here about the prediction. You're right.
Yeah. So someone has a crystal ball, or they're very psychic. Oh, no.
Although the election is November 3rd, and it's been said that we won't know the results until days later. When do you think we'll know the results?
All right. Jimmy, you raise an important point, and I hope the American people understand it, because this is something I worry about. My view is every vote must be counted. For reasons which I don't have the time to get into tonight, you're going to have a situation, I suspect, in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, other states, where they are going to be receiving huge amounts of mail-in ballots. And unlike states like Florida or Vermont, they're not being able, for bad reasons, to begin processing those ballots until, election day, or maybe when the polls close. That means you're going to have states dealing with perhaps millions of mail-in ballots. Here is my worry. What polls show and what studies have shown is that for whatever reason, Democrats are more likely to use mail-in ballots. Republicans are more likely to walk into polling booths on election day. It is likely that the first votes that will be counted will be those people who came in on election day, which will be Republican. And here is the fear, and I hope everybody hears that. It could well be, and, I don't know what's going to happen, nobody does, but it could well be that at 10 o'clock on election night, Trump is winning in Michigan, he's winning in Pennsylvania, he's winning in Wisconsin, and he gets on the television, he says, "Thank you, Americans, for re-electing me. It's all over. Have a good day." But then the next day and the day following, all of those mail-in ballots start getting counted, and it turns out that Biden has won those states. At which point Trump says, "See, I told you the whole thing was fraudulent. I told you those mail-in ballots were crooked, and we're not going to leave office." So that is a worry that I and a lot of people have. So the results, we don't know what's happened. Maybe the results will be on election day, but people should be aware of that possibility.
That was Bernie Sanders on Jimmy Kimmel Live a few weeks before the election, and we have another clip coming up with President Biden.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. Folks, we got a lot of work to do. I don't only need you to get me elected, I need you once I'm elected. No longer just who gets to vote or making it easy for eligible people to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote and whether your vote counts at all. It's about who gets to count the votes, whether they should count at all. Who gets to count the vote? Count the vote. Count the vote. It's about election subversion, not just whether or not people get to vote. Who counts the vote?
Yeah.
It's all about counting the vote. You know, and as I sit there and listen to these clips, it's especially the first one when we had Bernie Sanders. He predicted the election. I mean, it was 3 weeks before the election, wasn't it?
Three weeks before the election, and there's a term now, predictive programming, and we found out that through the Tucker Carlson interview in episode 75 of Mike Benz, that there was a censorship scheme that was well thought out prior to the 2020 election. They knew that people wouldn't buy into it. We started an agency called the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and there's a lot there. It's like the 17th or 18th intelligence agency, if you want to call them an intelligence agency. But they played a huge role as the censorship nerve center when it came to COVID and when it came to the 2020 election. And just getting back to what the people can do, right? We'll save the technical stuff for Unleashed, so everyone has to tune into Unleashed. Right. But let's just talk about what happened in Florida and how the vote count is centralized. And that's a problem. We need to go back to counting the paper ballots at the precinct level, and we vote in private and we count in public. And we would catch the anomalies of 50 ballots coming in sequential, right, which happened in 12 out of 13 races.
Wow.
Precincts in my race. So, I think there is no plan B. There is no alternative, that we have to do this because they're CISA, however you want to pronounce it, they're embedded now. And it was an agency that was started in 2018, which it's pretty devastating to our sovereignty of our local voting jurisdictions. We've done a lot of I've worked with a team of people, so we can't just take all the credit. We've done a lot of forensics, and the LA Times wrote an article saying that we're far right-wing, crazies, but meanwhile, some of the folks are left-wing crazies. So it's both parties. This is nonpartisan issue. There's no reason. It's our tax dollars. They're our votes. We have to get back to counting the votes at the precinct level, and and then we'll talk about how Tallahassee is working pretty much against the people.
We will. We're going to take a short break, and we'll come right back, and we're going to go into this a little bit deeper. Remember, Michael Circus for Martin County Commission District 5 wants to remind all residents that the greatest power you have as a resident is to be involved in your local politics. Vote on August 20th for your next county commissioner. Michael Circus, focused on the future, educated on the past. Paid for by Michael Circus, campaign for County Commission District 5.
Attention boaters, are you looking for a safe harbor during hurricane season or a top-notch boatyard to keep your vessel in tip-top shape? Look no further than Indiantown Marina. Indiantown Marina is not just your average boat storage facility. Nestled in South Florida along the Okeechobee Waterway, we're a well-protected hurricane hull that savvy cruisers love to call home. We offer a full array of boatyard services or do-it-yourself. Reserve your safe hurricane match today and let Indiantown Marina be the ultimate caretaker for your vessel. For more information, call 597-2457 or visit IndiantownMarina.com. Get ready, country music lovers. Coming to Archie's this weekend is Susie Nash with the soul of Patsy, Martina's vocal range, Reva's swagger, and Dolly's heart. Yes, you heard it right. Susie Nash is setting her course to be the next country sensation. Catch her live at Archie's in Fort Pierce Friday and Saturday from 5 to 8 and Sunday from 2 to 5. Too far away? Don't fret. Just strum your way to Spotify, Apple Music, or any streaming service. Or grab a CD at SusieNash.com. So tune in and turn it up. It's time for Susie Nash.
You're listening to The Casey Ingram Show on WSTU Digital 1450. Call in with questions and comments at 220-9788. 220-WSTU. And now back to the show.
Don't forget Susie Nash. She plays every weekend at Archie's in Fort Pierce, Friday and Saturdays from 5 to 8, Sundays from 2 to 5. She's absolutely amazing. She's going to be going on tour very shortly, but you can catch her at Archie's right now, 401 South Ocean Drive. Everybody knows Archie's in Fort Pierce. No shoes, no shirt, no problem. And Michael Circus from Martin County Commission District 5 wants to remind all residents that the greatest power you have as a resident is to be involved in your local politics. Vote on August 20th for your next county commissioner. Michael Circus, focused on the future, paid and educated on the past. Paid for by Michael Circus. Campaign for County Commission District 5. Jeff Buongiorno, you are in the studio today running for CD 18 Congress on the Republican ticket, and we are talking about election integrity. And right now there is a bill in the Senate, HB 721, that you want to make folks aware of and make sure that they get their opinion and voices known. So let's talk a little bit about 721.
Yeah, 721, and it's CD 21 now that we had the redistricting. I think you may have said 18.
I did say 18. You're right. Good catch. Yeah. We are 21.
So the reason we played that clip on Bernie and what I call predictive programming is now there's a terrible bill that is in advance of the, and it's such a cliche, it's the most important election of our lifetime, and they keep becoming more important as the controversy on the integrity of the election grows.
Right.
So does the importance of the elections. But what's on the floor now, and it's very odd that they're at the end of the session, and all of a sudden this bill comes out, and it's we call it the Shut Your Mouth law, the Shut Your Mouth bill, and basically they want to criminalize the questioning of an election in the state of Florida. And we're seeing the First Amendment go by the wayside. That's another topic. But why now? Why now, Governor DeSantis? And Governor DeSantis, why haven't you answered any of those 175 petitions that were signed by the people? But this is a telltale sign, in my opinion, that it's predictive, right? There's going to be an election, and let's get this law through. And why at the end of the session? Usually they'll give them more time. The bills are presented early on. And the other thing I'm noticing is that in 43 states, we're seeing this drive towards this 4-digit Social Security, the last 4 digits of your Social Security number being used as valid ID. And it even overrides your photo, or it's on parallel to a photo ID. So, how are these laws being passed in all as cookie cutter laws across the country?
So many states, right?
So it's as if they're federalizing the elections by, I don't know if it's intimidation, bribery, blackmail, or how they're all being passed at the state level across the country. And we know Mark Elias has a lot to do with this, and his team of Cooey Perkins, who actually had their own skiff in their office, and they plotted this a lot of this out. But let's talk about how our state legislators, how they're not working for the people, how they're writing laws that they're detrimental to the security and the integrity of our elections. And there's a rep, Rep Mike Caruso. He's a family man. He's been serving the people, but he's passed some questionable bills, pertaining to electric vehicles, and he voted in favor of this this Shut Your Mouth bill, as I call it. But I had I'm sure it's over now, but I had a personal relationship with Rep. Caruso, and we exchanged some text messages. And I had an experience when I was running in Palm Beach County where I spoke at an event, and I was approached by a woman, happened to be Haitian. Love Haitians, nothing against Haitian people. She said, "Oh, you really have to come and meet my boss. He wants to. I think you'd be a great candidate, and we want to support you." So we set up a meeting, and I went to their office, and they had a radio station on site, and they were right next to a church, and they said, "We have this great reach, and we want to see you get elected, but for $85,000, we'll go around and we'll get all the ballots for you, and we'll guarantee you a win in the primary." So I said. So while they were built, now the timing of this is very interesting. It was about April 24th or so, and this is when the Resign to Run bill, which allowed Governor DeSantis to remain governor and run for federal office. And there was so many bad aspects of this bill. It was they call it Resign to Run. I call it sell your soul to the devil. So they baked a lot of bad things into that bill in order as a return to pass DeSantis and allow him to run for president. And how'd that work out? But anyway, I mentioned this in a text to Rep. Caruso while he was in session, while 70-50 was being debated. And I said, I told him the exact story I just mentioned, and he responded, yes, they do that. My wife ran for mayor of Delray. She didn't pay, and she lost. So here you are, an elected official. You know that this ballot harvesting is going on, and you don't get up and speak about it. It's to me, that's a malfeasance at the least. And I have a question from Mr. Caruso. Did you buy into it and pay to play to win your election? But you're an elected official. You have an opportunity to push back on the narrative that these month-long election early voting periods are legitimate, and to cite the fact that, hey, my personal experience, right? I mean, that's why I think you elect people is based on their personal experience, their life experience. And, mine's been in business. My incumbent served in the military, and I'm sure he's a great soldier. I'm going off on a little tangent here, but great soldiers, they're good at taking orders and following leadership. And I believe that leadership is influenced by, I'm going to come out and say it, our intelligence community and our military leaders. And this is how we're getting these cookie-cutter laws passed across, the entire nation that is, in essence, federalizing our elections. So
So if you were on Facebook, you saw those text messages. We put them up that Jeff was just talking about here on the radio, and it's between yourself and Mike Caruso, and it's pretty alarming. So I want to also talk a little bit, Jeff. I have so many things that are going through my head as we're talking. First of all, the border is an absolute disaster, and we're talking about, election integrity, and you had mentioned that they're just using the last four digits of a Social Security number. Let's talk about that a little bit more so people realize how damaging that can be to our election process.
So
integrity.
This is all about connecting the dots now. When we have this, this mass immigration, illegal aliens flooding the border, and we know they're being assisted by non-governmental organizations. And, one of the aspects of 70-50 was that is it legal for a non-governmental organization to hire a non-citizen to register a person to vote? That was in there. And if, Escamani or whatever her name is, and all of the left-leaning reps it was in lockstep. NGOs, she made this speech that, she was Iranian and she came to college and she wouldn't have known how to register to vote if it wasn't for the NGOs. So they made this great big play for NGOs, and the Republicans just sat back and watched, didn't fight back at all. So now we have NGOs south of the border in the Darien Gap, and they're handing out, they're aiding and abetting an invasion of the country, basically, and they're handing out what's called they're handing out cell phones with an app called the CBP One app, Customs Border and Patrol CBP One app, and this allows them an appointment. So our border agents are acting as concierge services for the illegals, but they're picking up their data, and they're doing something with it. And well, what I noticed by going to the Social Security SSA.gov's website, there's an aspect of voter verification, and they're accepting 4 digits of a Social Security number as ID, and they're running this check of the ID based on the last 4 digits.
The last 4 digits of a Social Security number only.
Yeah, I mean, for 100 years.
Think about that.
It said on your Social Security card, not for ID purposes. Now, they made a lot of law changes during the 8 years of Obama, and they even ramped it up more when Trump was in office. But the problem here is that in Texas, you have the numbers there. I think in a 20-week period, we had I think about a million people registered in Texas. We had 962,000 voters registered in this manner. And when I say in this manner, it means there's no local ID. There's no driver's license. They didn't move from another state. They didn't have a county ID. They didn't just turn of voting age. They're only registering. So, I don't know if this chart is up on.
It is on Facebook.
So
you can see the chart.
You can see the states that they're targeting, and number one is Texas. Texas is a border state, right? And that we saw what happened in Arizona. We saw that the Katie Hobbs take over. But if we lose Texas, we lost it all. And there was 962,000 voters registered through this what's called the Help America Verify Voters Act. Part of the Help America Vote Act. HAVV is just part of that larger bill. And in Pennsylvania, we had 500,000, right? What do we think about in Pennsylvania? Arkansas. They're targeting Arkansas, and it's very funny. Sarah Huckabee Sanders did the rebuttal to the State of the Union address, and the next week there was like 200,000 registered. So I don't know if they're weaponizing the DHS, and this is what I'm calling for Congress right now. And I spoke to our incumbent on this at length, and the incumbent in CD 21 is for this agency called CISA. He's against defunding CISA. Now, CISA, the cybersecurity, infrastructure security agency, who has basically been the nerve center of censorship, is also under Mayorkas, and that's the Department of Homeland Security. So if I'm calling for Congress, if you're going to impeach Mayorkas, who leads the Department of Homeland Security, if you really wanted to have balls, you would defund the entire DHS. You have someone you're accusing of crimes who has, still has all the funding and all the power. Is it so? Is this kabuki theater, or are you serious? And you have this opportunity. March 8th, the appropriations bill is up for funding for at least CISA. I'm not sure about the entire DHS, but another thing is why are we paying CBP agents to be concierge? Why are they letting people in? Right. To me, they're public service. They have families, but to me, they're also aiding and abetting the invasion of the country. But this whole, so it's the perfect storm, right? We have DeSantis telling us that you shut your mouth on this bill 721. We're allowing people to register by vote, here's the thing in Florida specifically, is that you can request a vote by mail ballot by only producing the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. If you go to the Palm Beach County website or any county's website, you'll see that it says, you must produce the Florida ID or county ID, or it's this long litany of things, or the last 4 digits of your Social Security number, and you can request ballots for, your friend or your mother or whomever. My problem is that let's just talk about, we want to curtail the distribution of phantom ballots that go out. That's half the battle. When you go and vote in person, before that ballot is handed to you, you have to produce photo ID, sign something, and do a verification. So the act of receiving the ballot, which is just as dangerous as casting the ballot, because what comes next? It's 2 separate processes, right? They're separate, but they're not equal. If I go online and I don't even show my face, all I have to do is give 4 numbers, and I could do that 3 times for people that I claim are I have the authority to do so for, which, you don't even have to prove that. So that has to change. If Tallahassee wants to work for us, they have to change that. We can't accept for this is a crisis. This is an emergency. And I don't, whether you're in session Tallahassee or not, this has to be addressed before the 2024 election, or we have tremendous threat surface and again, which nothing's changed. It's actually worsened. And part of the reason it worsened is that the governor, wanted this resign to run bill, and some of these concessions were made. They wanted to allow, okay, this is a good one. And I was going to say this for Unleashed, so tune in to Unleashed, but I'm going to disclose this here. In 7050, they wanted to allow the signature verification on the ballot when it was returned. They wanted to exclude the signature verification and only verify by the last 4 digits.
That's insane.
Yeah, and I call it the Carrie Lake law because she exposed this when they had like 8 guys in a smoke-filled room counting ballots.
That's the only check our supervisor of election has to even make sure it's hopefully the right person voting.
So what the Maricopa Board of Elections said is that we had 8 people on a 8-hour shift, and they signature verified like 188,000 ballots. Now, if you ask an expert, it takes between 30 and 45 seconds. The time's not there to do that. So what they were, in my opinion, what they were trying to do is to increase the bandwidth of how fast they could verify a signature. All you have to do is look at 4 numbers, look at the screen, boom, 3-5 seconds, as opposed to having to actually hold it up and signature and verify it. So these are all,
this is the integrity of our nation. It's based on our voting processes. And to break down the integrity of our voting process, that is what's going to tear us up from within. Shane Snavely said, and you talked about it already, but ask Jeff about the massive voter registrations in Texas. It's so large, it's impossible. And that's kind of what you're just talking about right now. It's impossible.
I'll give you an example. In the same period, Florida had 735 people register in a 1-week period ending January 13th. Texas had 89,000. Arizona, 30,000. Georgia is between 5 and 20,000. It's constant. It's every week, and people should follow this. Now, the voter registrations aren't being seen at the local level, which is what scares me. So you have these registrations that are out there, and this is where CISA comes in, and this whole this is an aspect that's kind of in the weeds. I don't want to go too far into, but they have basically control of all of any website. It's called a top-level domain that ends in .gov, and you're noticing the Florida Supervisor of Elections, all 67, are migrating to this .gov from .com. But I looked at 30 of the 67 were on .gov. Now, there's something in IT, and if there's any IT folks out there, I'd like to get like a letter signed by at least 50 of them, 50 of our top IT people to confirm this. But what CISA did was they became a registrar like GoDaddy, and what they now have access to all the DNS of .gov, which opens up the fact that their server is Cloudflare. So they're all on the same server, to make it simple for the folks out there, for their DNS, which controls your website resolves from an IP address to a name. So they have control over the top-level domain, and they're all on Cloudflare. So they don't need the SolarWinds breach, which had all this management software across all of our IT, all of our local jurisdictions, voting jurisdictions, servers. So this is already in the cards, and this is very scary. And when we talk about cards, we have 51 traders who signed from the intelligence community who signed off that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. And if you remember, back in the 80s, we had our intelligence agency put out some cards of the Baghdad folks in the Iraq
right,
war.
I do. Yes,
and
yes,
there
yes.
was Chemical Ali and Baghdad
Yep.
Bob. Well, I have on my website, I have all of the intelligence agents who signed off on that letter. So you have a deck of playing cards,
fantastic.
and we exposed them all. And we changed the club's suit in the card to an 8-ball. And we made Hunter the king of 8-ball. So you could buy this on votebongi.com. That's BONGI, votebongi.com. And we have a neat little redirect that goes to jeffbuongiorno.com. So don't get scared, but this is what you do with DNS, and this is what CISA has control over. Just gave that as a quick example. So
Okay.
my website, votebongi.com. goes to my jeffbuongiorno.com website with a simple redirect.
Okay.
Okay.
Jeff, there's a lot to cover here. And I want to step back for 1 second. And I have to say, folks, if you were following my Facebook page a couple weeks ago, Vicki Davis, our Martin County Supervisor Elections, was here in the studio and invited me to tour the office. And I did. And she's very open about everything here in Martin County. You found a little different things in St. Lucie and Palm Beach County. I mean, we talked about your election from last
Vicki Davis.
time.
I had a phone call with Vicki Davis because what we did was I'm an IT guy, and we approach everything. Some people say you're a tin hat, but no, I'm a zero trust tolerance. You can't let anyone in. I'm responsible. I do managed services. I protect people's networks, right? They have their financial records. They have all their sales pipelines. They have secrets for the Department of Defense contracts. Manufacturers do a lot of work, as you mentioned in my bio, with manufacturers. So when we did forensics, and there was an article in the LA Times written about this presentation that I made last year at CPAC. It's actually about a year now. And at CPAC, we made this presentation, and we just did a simple scan of a forensic image of a server that was used at a voting jurisdiction. And we found there was 8,671 potential vulnerabilities on.
Wow.
And we actually did the forensics, and we dug in, and that's a whole nother show we could do on. And you can't unsee what I have seen, and that's part of the reason why I'm here, trying to get this narrative out. And if you're not a tech person, you don't
Jeff,
understand.
that's just it. Most of it's over most of our heads, including myself, because tech is just something that...
So I called Vicki Davis, and I said, hey, Vicki, would you mind if we came in and we just ran a scan to see the vulnerabilities? And this is when she clammed up, and she said, well, no, the government handles that. Or they send someone. So this gets back to one of my opening statements where the blind faith and trust of these institutions has gotten us to where we are now. And I also challenge right now, or request from Vicki Davis, to let my team come in and just do a forensic analysis and see what the vulnerabilities are. And we know what they are because they're using technology from 2005 that hasn't been upgraded. What a lot of these, ESS and Dominion, they're basically one and the same. And I don't want to call these companies out intentionally because it's almost plausible deniability because it's not really their software where the gaps are, but it's in the older technology that they rely on where the gaps are, and I call them gaps, we might call them bugs, or in some cases, they're features for the bad actors. And this is what we found, that they're leveraged, they're features for the bad actors. So, what we really need to do is count votes at the precinct level. So if 50, vote-by-mail ballots come in sequential order for the Florida District 21 incumbent, well, we're going to look at all the ballots as a whole and say, well, we only have 1,100 people registered in this district, and we got back 6,000 vote-by-mail ballots. When it's centralized, you can't do that. We have to vote in private and count in public.
And the public has to be invited, and they are here. I know locally that they are invited to watch the vote count, where there has been issues up in St. Lucie County and Palm Beach County with the vote watchers.
Well, that's it can't be centralized. That's the problem. You can't have 12 people in a smoke-filled room counting ballots, no matter what. I told you my experience in St. Lucie, REC, when they voted on Section 8, which would allow them to allocate funds to the incumbent and printed material. And they took what did they do? We voted, everyone voted, all the members voted. They took the ballots and left the room and came back and said, yeah, it's approved. So, it can't just be, it needs to be in the light of the public, and it needs to be decentralized. And this, what they're talking about, I mean, if you listen to Robert Ray, the director of the FBI, and all of these, threats that we have Russian nuclear missiles that are going to take the power grid down. So what happens on election night if they take the power grid down and they're counting on machines? You can't count on the machines. Number one, we've seen instances where the dot that you fill in on the ballot doesn't even matter. It's the QR code making the vote.
Wow. Again, we're speaking with Jeff Buongiorno. He is running for Congress CD 21 on the Republican ticket. And you remember him from last time. He's back this time. And as you can tell, Jeff has really been looking at election integrity. He's been watching the votes. There were so many questions throughout the nation last year. And Jeff, I think one of the biggest things that concerns me, it's all local, state decided on how votes are handled. But we saw, for example, up in Pennsylvania, that the write-in ballots were counted weeks after, days after, where at least here in Florida, they're counted the day of the election. But that's to me, it was the opportunity that opened up the door that said there's fraud here. all of a sudden the votes were here, and then all these write-in ballots just seemed to keep appearing for not just hours but days.
So we could talk about Bernie Sanders and how that happened, and how the predictive
Right, that
programming,
was-
and how it was the Atlantic Council and the Aspen Institute, the University of Washington, and the Stanford Internet Observatory on how they put this whole thing together, and how they planned on censoring it. But you don't censor something if it's for good reasons. So this was all planned way in advance, and I needed people's support. My website's votebongi.com, BONGI.com. From there, you can find all my social media outlets. But I need support. I need yard signs. I want to thank everyone for their support. Last run, a lot of great folks agreed to yard signs, and that's one of the big drives now. I don't want to just drop them on the highway with 22 other signs where it doesn't really mean anything. A yard sign to me is a sign of true love and appreciation for what I'm doing. So if anybody wants to, can help me out with a yard sign, I know it's a little early for that, but that says a lot. To me, one yard sign is worth 20 signs on the side of the road.
Well, there's yard signs, and Jeff, a lot of folks, they have HOAs, and you can come
Yep,
and speak to their
exactly.
groups. Just look up Jeff. He'll come talk to you, and
Yep.
I think it's important to ask those questions, get to know these candidates. One thing, folks, that unfortunately I can tell you already, it's not going to happen without even being told, is a debate between Jeff and Brian Mast. Brian Mast he's declined them in the past, over the past elections, so I would love to see that debate, but I just doubt it'll happen.
Well, guess what? You can, because we kind of established a relationship when we have textings. I have texts that go back and forth.
Well,
where
we'll
we're-
have to go
where-
through
where we're
those.
debating issues, and I don't want to even listen. It's not just any one person. It's this whole ideology. It's a cancer in D.C. I equate it to the steroid period. They point out Jose Canseco, one of the guys who hit the home runs, but the pitchers were
Right.
juicing too. So we
It's
need-
not one person,
It's
I
not just
agree,
one person.
but
I'm not
our
singling
district,
out,
we have to
but
focus here.
The problem is that we're under. If you really think about it, we're under the control of the intelligence community
Mm-hmm.
and the military. And soldiers, they take orders. That's what makes them a good soldier. So just keep that in mind. But one HOA meet and greet to me is worth 20 REC meetings, or Republican executive, because the incumbents have a lot of funds, and what do? They donate to these RECs, and we saw it in St. Lucie County, where they left the room when they count the votes, and the people were really wanted to just give everyone a chance. So that's
Stuff really happens, folks. It really does,
yeah,
right here in our backyard.
folks, you can't make this stuff up. So have me into your home. If it's not an HOA, bring in 5-10 people, and we'll talk about it. We'll break open a laptop. There's another great movie that was a documentary that was done on this in 2006. It was on HBO. This was before it was illegal to question an election. It's called Hacking Democracy, and this came after the heels of Bush Gore, and nothing's changed. It's gotten worse since 2006. Hacking Democracy. So Jeff Buongiorno, votebongi.com, BONGI, Jeff Buongiorno, votebongi.com. Thanks, appreciate it.
Absolutely, and we will have Jeff back on in the future here as well, as he's running for this office. And there was so much information, folks, that we wanted to talk about today, and we probably got to about 10% of it. So there's a lot more topics, a lot more information to cover. But in the meantime, votebongi.com.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. This campaign isn't about me. It's about getting the election straight. I'll fight for you in Washington, but winning this seat is a byproduct of my success in straightening out the elections that are.
Folks, it's always good to hear all the sides and listen to all the candidates. VoteBongi.com. Up next, I'm going to have Mary Dawson in the studio. So if you're on Facebook, we're going to have another show. But Mary Dawson will air next Wednesday on WSTU AM 1450.